Miranda Aisling, and I'm an idea person. I came to you today to talk about a specific idea of mine, which I came up with when I was an undergraduate art major. I was both pottery and painting, and I wanted to go big. I was in a studio, I had a lot of stuff, so I made this canvas right here is 8 feet by 7 feet. The problem with going big is that it's very expensive, and I didn't want to buy 8 foot by 7 foot stretchers. I also was in Virginia, and I couldn't bring them back to Connecticut without a headache. So these are two different canvases, one of which is stretched and a diptych, and the one with the yellow circles is an unstretched canvas, which is basically glorified fabric staple gun to a wall. And so when you're working on an 8 foot canvas, staple gun to a wall, you get really, really close to it, and I realized that canvas actually has a texture. I'm a very textural artist, so I was really interested in that. And I was painting one day, and I got really close to the texture and realized that canvas is just fabric. And as someone who's been knitting since I was a child, I make fabric. So why don't I just make my canvases? And so my new series is called Knitted Canvases, and they've all been in a show recently, and I had to pick them all up today on the tee, which is why they're behind me here. That wasn't supposed to happen, but... so the Knitted Canvases started then, and unfortunately, it was the end of my college year. I was a double major, I was a triple minor, I moved to Boston, I started graduate school, I started 2 jobs, one of which was as an art teacher at the MFA, and the paintings kind of went on the back burner. But in 2012, in the middle of the year, I got a studio space, which, if you're an artist of any sort, especially big art, it's very important to have a space to make your art. So finally I was back there, I was making things, and I'd been knitting the whole time, the entire year that I had between the conception of this idea and getting back to painting again. And so these are a couple of canvases with gesso on them. Gesso, if you don't know, is just a white primer. It's basically like a white plastic paint. And I do that because I'm an oil painter, and oil and yarn don't really mix that well, so you have to put the gesso in between. So this is one of my first knitted canvases. It's over there. And if I get theoretical about it, I can talk about how fine art, especially abstract oil painting, is very male-dominated. Pollock and all those guys were like really macho. And I'm combining the fine art of abstract oil painting with the female-dominated craft of knitting, which the demographic is right in front of you. So I put those together, and that's the theory behind it, but it's also just a lot of fun. I've been interested in craft and fine art for a long time. As I said, my second major was in pottery, and in undergraduate I saw that my paintings that I finished sold for literally 10 times as much as my pottery, which I had worked on for just as long. And it was really eye-opening to be in both positions. I wasn't a painter trying not to, rub it in a potter's face. I was also the potter who made 10 times less. So that was a really interesting part that pushed this forward. But the other thing is that I just keep coming up with all these ideas. Like I said, I'm an idea person, and every time I go into the studio I have new ones. So this painting here has needles left in the top. It's kind of hard to see there, but the idea is that you can tell that it was knitted by hand. I also am experimenting with clear gesso, so that the color of the yarn is actually the first color in the canvas, and I don't start from white. I also had this great idea the other night that I'm using plastic bags to knit. I don't know if anybody has ever knitted with plastic bags, but it's really cool. So I'm using that as my base. These were knitted by a guy named Eric Gleason, who is a friend of a friend, and he made these mittens and didn't like them, so he gave them to me for a coffee. And I gessoed them, and now they're my art. And it's another step about pushing it past just a rectangular piece of art. I have this idea of making like the Invisible Man, so hat, sweater, hands, skirt, boots, but all painted knitting. The other thing about them, though, is that they were made by someone else. And my degree right now, my graduate degree, is in community art. I'm a teacher, I'm a community artist, and so while I love spending time working on my art in the studio, these are not yet done, so I'll still be working on those. I also like to work with people. And so my newest part of the knitted canvases is that, like those mittens, I'm having other people knit my canvases. So, if anybody here, I can see many of you working on things that I would love to paint. Just tell me. I'm very easily reachable, and I also just love discussing ideas and putting lots of different things together, which is how this all started. So contact me and maybe we can make something.